Welcome back. New this morning, the U.S. issuing a joint warning with the Five Eyes intelligence nations that accuses China of using LinkedIn and other job posting platforms to recruit people to spy, and those people with access to classified information. They say that state operatives pose as employees of private consultancies, think tanks, and human resource firms and place online jobs ads to obtain secretive information, which places pressure on those who respond with hefty financial incentives. LinkedIn responded to the claim, saying, quote, "Creating a fake account or misrepresenting your identity is a clear violation of our terms of service. We remain focused on detecting state-sponsored abuse and will enforce our policies against fake accounts." Joining me now is the Gatestone Institute Senior Fellow, Gordon Chang. Gordon, this seems to be like right out of the China playbook. They want to spy on Americans. They've been doing it for a long time, and they're now using LinkedIn and job posting sites to do so. What's your reaction?
Well, China uses every point of contact to take down our society, whether we're talking about espionage, as in this LinkedIn case, or sabotage or whatever. Now, we have the means to stop them, and we have to use asymmetric means because it's very hard to actually catch all these bots on LinkedIn. But we have the means to do this because, for instance, China needs access to the American market, especially because Xi Jinping has turned his back on consumption. That means he's got to export to the U.S. And we're 34% of global consumption is represented by the United States.
Well, so what do you think we should be doing as a nation to try to counter all this surveillance? I mean, the surveillance is coming at us fast from Beijing, and this has been going on a long time.
And we have been overwhelmed. The FBI is overwhelmed, federal government's overwhelmed, state and local governments are overwhelmed. And the only way to deal with this right now is to eliminate these points of contact that the Chinese regime have with us. Now, that's controversial. That's going to be very difficult. But that's the only way to really deal with this, unless we are willing to impose the severest costs on China to get them to stop this. But this is going to be the challenge for the United States this decade.
And it's not the Chinese people, right? I mean, they have to follow the law of this Chinese Communist Party. And the law of national security in China is that if the government comes to you and says, we need this information, get this information from Americans, you got to do it.
Yeah, 2017 National Intelligence Law of China actually codifies the obligation to commit acts of espionage. So it's right there out in the open. But more important, as you point out, the Communist Party system, top down, nobody can disobey an order of the Communist Party, whatever it is, to espionage or whatever.
And if you have family in China, then you're in big trouble, because if you don't do it, they'll threaten your family, right?
And they do that all the time. And that's the reason why they have all their agents in our country, because they actually contact ethnic Chinese, whether they're citizens of the U.S. or not, and they get them to commit these acts of espionage.
That's amazing. All right, speaking of agents, I want to ask you about agentic AI. Now, we're in a race with China here, too. The president signed a new executive order on artificial intelligence this week, aiming to preserve American innovation while also ensuring the most powerful AI capabilities support domestic cyber defense, critical infrastructure, and strategic competition with China. Secretary Bassett called an emergency meeting with the banks and the AI companies recently to talk about whether or not the AI infrastructure in place is going to be secure. And here's what he told me when I asked him about it. Watch. There are a significant amount of worries about this agentic AI. What kind of a framework do you want to see around AI?
So we've got great collaboration from the AI labs, the three major ones, and I am sure that this is going to be one of the great technological innovations, not only of our lifetime, but maybe since the railroads, that we are going to see innovation like we've never seen before. I believe that we have about a 9 or 12-month lead over the Chinese, and I think that should accelerate, because the recursive nature of the AI models, the model learns from doing. So we want to stay ahead of the Chinese, because if you can imagine, what if places were swapped, right, and the Chinese, they were 12 months ahead of us? Then there would be a lot of mischief going on, whether it's in the financial system, manufacturing. So I do believe that we will be able to work with industry and get the patches in place, and they will coincide much better with the release cycle.
And of course, what he's referring to is that Bessent wanted to know if the banks were fully secured, whereas they can actually put patches in place to stop the bad actors. The bad actors are using AI to say, oh, how can I hack your bank account? And Bessent wants to ensure that the banks can put these patches in places to stop those bad actors.
Yeah, and of course, it's not just the banks. And President Trump issued his AI order this week, and that actually shows unprecedented cooperation between the federal government and the big AI companies, because what they are doing is voluntarily showing the federal government what they've got 30 days before launch, and that gives us the chance to actually patch things, as Secretary Bessent has talked about. Yeah. So this is a really good development.
Somebody made the point to me, you can't really tell them all the patches that you're putting, because as soon as you say we're going to put a patch here and there, they know where the vulnerabilities are. So you've got to put patches all over the place to confuse the bad actors from this. This is really something that I think Washington is spending a lot of time on, Congress as well, to ensure that we've got a framework in place around AI and potential bad behavior around AI. Meanwhile, the administration is proposing a new round of tariffs on dozens of U.S. trading partners, talking about concerns over forced labor in global supply chains. Imports from China would face a 12.5% tariff rate compared to 10% on partners in the European Union. The USDA has announced Beijing is planning to purchase 25 million metric tons of American soybeans. So they seem to be keeping their promise there, Gordon. Your take on trade here?
Well, on the forced labor, we have Section 307 of the Trade Act of 1930, which prohibits the importation into the U.S. of goods made with forced labor. So we don't have to use the 301 tariffs, which is what the USTR was talking about on Tuesday, to prevent these goods from coming into the U.S. We can just say, no, you're not bringing them in altogether. And no, they shouldn't come into the U.S. because we know that a lot of China's products made with the forced labor of minorities, especially the Uyghurs and the other Turkic minorities, and that funds China's program of genocide. So clearly we shouldn't be letting them in, regardless of tariff rate, just no prohibition.
Well, Taiwan is obviously the priority for Beijing with regard to the United States. And Secretary of State Marco Rubio testified yesterday on Capitol Hill. He maintained that the administration's policy on Taiwan is unchanged. Watch this.
Our policy on Taiwan has not changed. 11 million in December was the single largest arms sales ever to Taiwan. So it was such a big deal, by the way, that the Chinese reacted to it with really hyper activity in terms of military exercises around Taiwan. We don't consult with the Chinese on these arms sales. We're aware of their position. They talk about it all the time, and I don't need to tell you, it wouldn't be breaking news that they're not in favor of these arms sales. They raise it, but they are not negotiated, and they're not consulted.
And Taiwan's main opposition leader visited Washington for a 2-week tour. She pushed messages right out of Beijing that Taiwan and mainland China are a single part of China, Gordon. This is a single unified region, she claims.
Yes, and she saw Xi Jinping in Beijing in April, and her message to the United States is that she is the one best able to maintain a stability across the Taiwan Strait. But she isn't. She's the head of the KMT, the Kuomintang, the main opposition party, and she effectively controls Taiwan's legislature, which just blocked enhanced defense spending bill, which basically prevents Taiwan from building its indigenous weapons. This is something that Washington does not like, and when she goes to our capital in a few days, I hope that she hears it from officials and from legislators saying, look, you've got to release this money because it's critical to maintain stability. There will be stability if you have Taiwan arms sales and if Taiwan develops its own weapons.
Yeah, well, look, obviously she's a China person. And she's
big time.
She's Beijing's person.
Yeah.
In Taiwan. All right, Gordon, great to get your take on all of this as usual. Thanks very much. Gordon Chang. Stay with us. We'll be right back.